No stairway. Denied.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John never wants to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
John, I stand at attention when I play that. No point. Can that be us? Can they be singing about us? You and me? Just two schlubs from North County?
You're saying, Brett, are you saying you stand corrected or you stand erected?
I said I stand at attention.
Oh, okay. There we go. And yes, they're just talking about two street toughs from the wrong side of the tracks. Actually, technically, Brad, in Spanish Lake, you're from the right side of the railroad tracks. Like I'm from east side of Spanish Lake. You're over from the Twillman side. Like you guys had some above ground pools over there. You guys were living large. But you're right though, Brad. We're just two street toughs from Spanish Lake, and we have our own theme song. That's right. Don't mess with us. We will essentially hit you over the head with our math book or something like that, right? Something like that. Okay. I've got a couple things I want to talk about. First off, but we got to get through the top three first. I just throw these out so you make note of it. So if I forget to talk about them, I'll
first
write
off,
them down. I got my pen, Brad.
Is Kim Gardner MIA? Have you heard this story?
Yeah, she's in Miami. That's what MIA stands for, right?
No, she's missing in action. Nobody can find her. Okay. Second story is Robert Kraft and Vladimir Putin. Do you know this bizarre, weird story?
Oh, I do not. Oh. Did he deflate Putin's balls?
Man, you are at it this morning. Okay, enough said. It's on with...
Time for the John Combest Top 3.
It is time for the John Combest Top 3. John puts together this website called johncombest.com. Amazing how it sounds. It's just like his name, Combest. Every single day for the past 22 plus years, he puts together this list of all the important things going on in the state of Missouri. We start the show off with the top 3. Guy comes in the studio. What's your name again?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And then what do you do?
And here they are. In third place.
And John gives us the top 3.
It's the 1970s. Brad's hanging out in an area now known as the Barn at Lucerne. He's playing some 70s music, and it's toward the end of the night. It's getting to be last call. Brad's spinning records. What does he put on? He puts on a song by the Chi-Lites. You know that one, Brad? You know the one I'm talking about?
I know all the Chi-Lites songs. It's the Chi-Lites, not the Chi-Lites.
Oh, it's Chi-Lites? I thought it was Chi-Lites, like they're from Chicago.
Well, but they were shy. See, as opposed to the people in Chicago now. They're not shy anymore. They're
Hey, leave Jussie Smollett out of this.
Yeah, keep going.
Anyway, Brad, it's the 1970s. Brad puts on a little record by the Chi-Lites, and it goes like this. Tell me, have you seen her? Tell me, have you seen her?
Oh, my God.
Brad, you referenced it. You know exactly what we're talking about. Where is our friend Kim Gardner, Brad? Have you seen her? Tell me, have you seen her?
Jeez.
Have you seen her, Brad?
Now, can I give you a contrarian point of view here?
Yeah, please do.
I'm going to connect the dots, and I'm going to say, or essentially put the two names on the same page and say Kim Gardner and Donald Trump. Okay? Do you know why I'm going to do that?
Because they both don't want to be prosecuted.
Well, because of the fact they've left office, but yet the opposite side of the political equation is after them to make their life miserable after they've left office. And if you know the story...
You think so?
Oh, Kim Gardner, they're trying to give her a subpoena. Isn't that what the deal is? She's trying to be subpoenaed for something?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I would just say real quickly that folks can find this on my website today. As always, I have a paywall-free link to post a spat story. Brad, as you referenced, State Auditor Scott Fitzpatrick says, in sum, that he's trying to wrap up this audit. He'd like to have a little bit of help from Kim Gardner. She's got a lot of documents that are critical here, and he just wants them back. Go ahead, Brad.
I think Scott would probably be better if he would go down to the junkyard and watch chrome bumpers rust. I think he'd probably have more productive time spent doing that. Once again, she's gone. let's let sleeping dogs lie, whatever you want to call them. I mean, nobody could get any documents out of her when she was officially in office. They
That's true.
Well,
she was so this is consistent with her behavior.
Right. They did all sorts of stuff. They subpoenaed stuff from her. They did freedom, not FOIA. They didn't do FOIA. They do sunshine law requests. She just ignored them all. So what are they going to do now? I mean,
yeah.
And
now,
she's.
I would say though, Brad, let me dispute you here. I think it's up to Fitzpatrick to at least put the call out. And yes, of course, a lot of this has to do with the fact that it is fun to spike the football on Kim Gardner. But you are going to have an incomplete report, as I understand it, if you don't have some of these documents.
You know what, John?
What's that?
My life may end because of the fact that I don't have a complete report from Scott. I mean, that might be the thing that pushes me over the edge. I mean, oh my God, the state auditor can't complete his report. Oh, terrible. Once again, see, the interesting things. There's a thing I want to talk about this morning about Maxine Waters. Okay, once again, the crazy
St. Louis native Maxine Waters.
Is she really originally from St. Louis?
Yeah, she is. She grew up in, I want to say she's from Kinloch.
We're talking about the U.S. rep, Maxine Waters?
Yeah, longtime representative from, I believe she represents South Central L.A., doesn't she?
Right, and she's in the news. It's just crazy, weird stuff again. I'm going,
And she's still alive, right? She's still with us?
Oh, yeah, she's still, I think she's still a U.S. rep.
Oh, yeah,
I think she still is. And let me just preface this by saying she's the one that said in a speech after Trump got elected that what you should do is anybody who's involved with the Trump campaign or the Trump administration, if you see them in a restaurant or you see them at a gas station, go and hassle them, yell at them, disturb their dinner, cause them problems. Okay?
Yeah, make their life uncomfortable.
Right. I'm like, okay. See, what's interesting about this whole thing is the Democrats keep saying, "Oh, look at Trump. He won't accept the results of the election in 2020." Well, go back and do your history dive in the election of 2016, where was it 2 days after? What was the next day after the election? After Trump he got elected or he got inaugurated. What is it on the Washington Post? Let the impeachment begin. What wasn't that the headline on the Washington Post or something like that? And we've had for years, we've had guys like Chuck Schumer have objected to election results. Hillary Clinton says that, other people are not legitimate presidents. They didn't win fair and square. It's a long history of that. And in fact, Brad, sometimes I think that people unwilling to accept uncomfortable election results might lead into story number 2 today. Oh, well, let's just go right to it.
Up a notch to number 2.
More fallout from the state convention, Brad. Now, I got to tell you, we started off the show, Brad, by you saying that you were standing upright, whatever it is. I stand corrected this morning, Brad, because remember yesterday I went on that big rant about how no media was going to cover the state convention. Remember that?
Right, but I understand Tracy Ellis was there.
Yeah, she was there. Absolutely. She was waving the flag. And I'm gonna decline to make a comment about you saluting her. But here's the thing, Brad. Today in the Springfield News Leader, now again to quote Blink 182, a day late, a buck short. They're writing the report. The Springfield News Leader writes about the state convention uniquely, Brad. The story comes from the education reporter, who's a woman named Claudette Riley, and at the state convention, the woman who was elected Republican, or I should say, National Committee woman to represent Missouri as part of the Republican National Committee is a member of the Springfield School Board. She's a woman named Marianne Muhammad, and I want to make sure I get this right, Muhammad Khani, and she is part of the, I guess you could call it a faction that won in the state convention the other day. I'll cut to the chase and I'll give you her key quote, Brad. She says the state convention fight was, quote, the establishment versus the little people. Now, we've had a whole lot of caterwauling in the last 48, 72 hours on social media. You'll recall yesterday, Brad, that I said that folks that were on the opposite side of the election and Springfield should tell their story. And some folks have been doing that on social media. Anyway, I would point people to my website today. There's a story from the Lake Expo publication in mid-Missouri. I think they're based out of Camdenton, that talks about Sophie Shore's victory, winning the chair of the state convention. And then again, the piece from the News Leader talks a little bit about what happened at the convention in Springfield.
Okay.
So I stand corrected, Brad. The media finally got around to covering the state convention.
So the reporter, the educational reporter, is reporting that this lady who's on the school board for the Springfield School District, is that what you said? She's
that's exactly right. Yeah.
She's a board member, and she called, I guess she's calling Bill Eigel and his followers the little people?
Yeah, the funny thing, Brad, you'll appreciate this reference. You know how people go around, like on some of your favorite radio stations, they call people rhinos, Republicans in name only?
I've never heard that before.
I know, it's one of your favorite phrases. Now, Kathy Jo Loy, I always get her name wrong, but she's a candidate down in the southwest part of the state. Her and Camelia Peterson were going back and forth because groups were battling over who's the real grassroots. And they came up with the term GINO, Brad. Now watch it.
GINO?
Brad.
Not rhino, but GINO?
Yeah, which would stand for grassroots in name only. So they were mocking themselves. They were having a little fun at their own expense, talking about the fact that maybe they are grassroots in name only.
John, here we go again. It's like what I said yesterday, and I know you pointed out the fact that when the roles were reversed, it was the same problem. The Republicans look like a bunch of rubes. You know, oh, we don't like you because you voted for this. Well, you voted for this, but I didn't vote. I'm going like, okay. You know what? It was just like one morning we had this discussion. There was, and remember, what the famous quote is, one of the lines is, "There's no I in team." But,
correct. Yeah.
But Mike Otten texted me and says, "But there is an I in win." And I'm thinking to myself, yes, he's got it right. And once again, this crazy weird stuff where it's the finger pointing, and this lady's calling the Bill Eigel, contingent, the little people. And first off, have you ever stood next to Bill Eigel before? I have.
Now, Brad, hold on. Now, you know that she's one of the little people.
Hold it. She's
you get
one
what
of
I'm saying, right? Like, she's on that team. She's saying we're the little people.
Oh, I thought she was being disparaging, that she was like making fun of like the Bill Eigel clan.
No, Brad, she won.
Oh, she is
just like the rest of the Eigel people won.
Right.
And she's saying it was the little people versus the establishment. So she's saying that she's the little people.
Bill Eigel's like 6'6". I'm not.
I don't think she meant that in a literal way.
I'm no small guy, but when I stand next to Bill Eigel, he towers over me. You know.
Back to your original point, Brad, about how silly some of this stuff has become. I think two things can be true here about the state convention. The first one is the folks who are the so-called establishment. Anybody who thinks that they're rhinos is just being disingenuous. And a lot of people who've been around for a long time and frankly might be a little ripe. They might be past their prime. Maybe they shouldn't be buying too many green bananas at this age. But you know what? They're real Republicans. And to call them rhinos is incorrect. And at the same time, Brad, something else can be true. It can be true that sometimes you lose to a better team. I had this conversation with a very specific 7-year-old boy in the last few weeks, Brad. And I told him, sometimes you're going to lose to a better team, a team that's better prepared, a team that's got better skill. And you could choose to complain about it, or complain about, a bad call from the refs or whatever. Or you could say, hey, we got beat by a team that was better prepared, that's better organized, maybe that's better skilled. So learn to take a loss. And at the same time, in victory, you can be gracious and not call everybody who opposes you a rhino.
See, John, you make fun of me sometimes because of the fact that I become very self-deprecating, but that's part of my philosophy of under-promise and over-deliver. It always bothers me, and we see it again for the second year in a row, when you read the Post-Dispatch and you listen to Camo X and listen to ESPN 101 and Fans 590. Oh my God, the Cardinals have such a great team this year. We got this guy and this guy and this guy. And for the second year in a row, they plain suck. And once again, it's it goes back to my lesson I learned from my old boss when he called me into the office to chastise me. And normally a good tongue lashing from him would have lasted 20, 30 minutes. This tongue lashing lasted about 90 seconds when he said to me, "Bloody Brad, don't forget something. I don't know who discovered the ocean, but it wasn't the effing fish. Think about that." You get too close to something, and you, just like example, how many times my sons, all played Little League ball, and my daughter was in competitive dance, and I heard, "Oh my God, we're so good. We're going to beat everybody." And you go to a tournament and you get your butt kicked because there's somebody else who's better than you, but you couldn't see past the fact that you were okay, but not great. You don't get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get exactly. It's the cliche of the typical dad standing on the sidelines and said, "Yeah, took my son to the batting cages. He's being scouted." "Oh, really? How old is he?" 11.
Well,
they want him to play at USC. They say he's really good.
I can tell you a real life experience with that, with a kid who was on my son's team for a year, and man, that turned out really bad for the kid. I mean, I felt sorry for the kid, but see, like when I used to umpire, I told you this before. I umpired Little League for several years. I would actually talk to the coaches, and I would get pushback from the coaches. And if you know anything about how the mechanics of throwing a curveball, it can really screw young kids' arms up.
Yeah, send you into Tommy John surgery at about the age 16.
Yes, exactly. And I wouldn't, I would say this as a nice comment to the coaches. I would say, "I see one of your pitches is throwing a pretty nasty curve. Don't you think it's a little bit too early for them?" And 9 times out of 10, I would be told to butt out,
Yeah, mind your own business, right. Brad. Call the balls and strikes.
Because what did they want? They wanted their kids to win, the same thing. "I want my son's going to play." Like in the St. Louis area, okay? In the entire St. Louis area, how many St. Louis born and breds are in Major League Baseball right now? I would be willing to bet the number is, of all the teams, not just the Cardinal, of all the various teams, I would be willing to bet the number is less than 10, probably less than 5, okay?
Yeah, it's probably 2 or 3.
Which means that of all these Little League teams and Corey League teams and CYC teams and stuff like that, and all these parents on the sidelines, matter of fact, this one parent that I will tell the story about sometime because it's actually sad, but it's funny at the same time. He openly said his son was his retirement project because his son was going to make so much money in the majors that he wouldn't have to work anymore.
Well, that's a healthy way, and that's a healthy way to talk to your kids. And as we get, Brad, I don't mean to throw a curveball, but as we get into the late innings, let's talk about an outlet that's calling some balls and strikes.
Who's that?
Can I get Casey?
Oh, you that's the cue for...
Yes.
The number one.
I didn't know what you're going. Okay, there it is, number 1.
The Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, Brad. We've talked about this before. This is what would give a little bit of relief to people who've been exposed to radiation, as the name suggests. But speaking of calling balls and strikes, Brad, somebody that we previously maybe we would have referred to them as an Angel Hernandez, maybe a terrible umpire that doesn't call balls and strikes. But we got to give this outlet credit, Brad. None other than NPR is giving a fair and balanced balls and strikes opportunity to Josh Hawley. Josh is talking a little bit about how we're getting to be the late innings, Brad, the late innings of when we can renew RECA, as it's known. It expires in about a month. And here's the main takeaway as we wrap up, Brad. The main takeaway is he says, Hawley thinks that Speaker Mike Johnson will actually take up this legislation now. He says, quote, "It's going to be really hard to say, no, we think that you should get nothing despite the fact your government poisoned you. I think at the end of the day, the speaker is not going to want to deliver that message right before an election." So in this case, it appears as though election year politics could help people who've been exposed to radiation.
So Josh is going to get his way, essentially, is what you're saying. He's going to get some...
what he's... I mean, Josh has been, I would say, and to your spirit, Brad, of under promise and over deliver, he has been pretty realistic about the chances of passage, and he points to a lot of people in the past. He's even pointed to U.S. Representative Ann Wagner as being not helpful enough. But in this case, he's showing more optimism than he usually has.
And especially since Ann Wagner is now that district, not District 1, but District 2, which includes the Weldon Spring area where a lot of this stuff is.
Correct. You're right, Brad.
You would think she would be more active than this, but apparently not. But what are you going to do, right?
Well, she says that she has been, and her office is listed. Immediately they listed a number of steps that they have taken to do that. So, that probably comes out in the wash, and they'll probably not kiss and make up. But anyway, could be good news, election year politics for that, Brad.
Maybe because you and I are Norco boys, and we grew up in North County, and like with you, we had friends who lived, I had friends who's in their backyard. The Coldwater Creek was in their backyard.
One of my best friends lived on Arrow Point Drive.
Right. I had friends of mine that swam in Coldwater Creek, and, once again, the crazy thing about it is I pointed this up time and time again, where people, even from North County, would go like, some people, well, that's all in the past. No, they're still digging the dirt over there on McDonald. Matter of fact, we talked about this goofy story before about they came out, we're going to close McDonald between Lindbergh and Airport Road because the bridge needs to be repaired. Well, first off, there is no bridge. There's a culvert
It's a glorified culvert.
It's a culvert where the Coldwater Creek goes underneath McDonald. And the reason they closed McDonald is because McDonald was built on top of the contaminated soil, which they're digging up. And it's like, okay, nobody wants to tell that story. We're closing it because the bridge needs to be rehabbed. No, bull, you know what? That's not what the case is.
And that culvert delivered a lot of contaminated soil to Wellston and Kinloch, where it infected a woman named Maxine Waters, Brad. Did you know that?
No, she was on the wrong side of the airport. She's on the east side of the airport, and they didn't have too many problems over there, except in some of the areas. Matter of fact, I can still tell you the name of a street, North Hanley, because I used to live up there. North Hanley, there's a street called Nyflot, Nyflot, which goes underneath 170. It's maybe about a quarter to a third of a mile south of 270. And when the trucks came from downtown St. Louis, where Mallinckrodt was, or North City, where the Mallinckrodt plant was, they came up, I can't remember exactly the route, but they would come up. In the old days, it was Graham Road. Now they turned into North Hanley, and they would make a left on Nyflot, and there was another area back there they dumped in, and a bunch of people on Nyflot had all sorts of crazy, weird cancers as well, too. And they documented the fact that these trucks, carrying, in the old days, they didn't have any tarps on the stuff. They were not, they were just like dump trucks, open bed dump trucks, and they'd fly along, and the dirt would come off, and it was radioactive stuff. That's the thing that bothers me about the fact that and once again, I'm not the biggest fan of Josh Hawley, even though he did have some pretty cool skinny jeans and pirate shoes on when I met him, and he lied to me, but that's a whole nother story. Well, actually, he didn't lie to me.
Brad, I think we got to go to break. I just got a text from my nurse. Her name it says Kim Gardner.
Yeah.
It says she wants to meet with me. I need to come in for a checkup. She said she just got out of nursing school. She said she took classes during the workday. And I'm like, why do you got to read your bio? I just need to know when my prostate exam is, right? And then I said, listen, I just got one question. Do you have skinny fingers, Kim? Because if you got fat fingers, I'm looking for another.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?